Mayor, do you know if there are any city employees among the confirmed cases in Clinton County?
Do you guys have any confirmed cases? We had a couple of close calls. It's just gonna be announced in there.
What's that? Yeah. Hey, Jared. So went out the day before everything closed down, so yeah, I've just been sitting here.
You got a minute?
Yeah.
Yeah. Behind the mic.
We live here, you know?
Yes.
I'll have to text you. 10-second lag. Probably 10-second lag.
Oops, my answer about healthcare, huh?
Oh, I get it. What's that?
You saw my answer about healthcare, huh? That's talking to Matt about that too. You don't know if you need healthcare with us.
Yeah.
But I haven't given up, I'm gonna keep working on self-service on that.
Mayor Reed,
Present, sorry about that.
you're muted.
Whoops.
I'm sorry, I was muted.
I'm
Sorry about that.
Counselor Barbell,
Here.
Counselor Gibbs,
Here.
Counselor McFarland,
Here.
Counselor D. Dominicus,
So our goal today is to approve numerous budget adjustments, and then secondly, to make some adjustments to operations, I guess you could say, to address those budget issues. So the first resolution has to do with the budget adjustments, and that's pretty simple. The second one,
Mike, you're
the budget
you're
adjustments
frozen.
have to take place, and what that does, and why the resolution looks the way it does.
Mike, I heard about 3 words of that, just so you know.
Oh, really? I'll try it again. Richard, would you mind explaining to the council the budget adjustment resolution and how that works and why it works the way it does?
It's a budget adjustment based on the assumptions that were put together by the committee, with pension contribution expense expected to go up 35% this year. AIM funding from the state expected to be cut by 25% this year. Healthcare costs expected to go up 10%, or twice the national average of inflation on healthcare. Sales tax revenue to be cut by roughly 25%. Special events, the budgeting for the revenue for that was $50,000, and that's not expected to be collected at all. And permits and fees to be cut by 50%. The total of all those adjustments are $3,043,734, and it affects various accounts. Sales tax revenue by $1,068,750. And then there's, a slew of vendor licenses, taxi license and permits, dog licenses, marriage license, everything that goes into the permits and fees number that was to be adjusted downward by 126,606. They're all listed on the budget adjustment as a decrease in income. And then, of course, the $50,000 reduced income for special events revenue, and AIM revenue sharing down $662,220. The increase in expenses are $113,846 in state retirement for employees, and $574,000 roughly for state retirement for police and fire. And healthcare, $448,425 increase. Now, this is all in the general fund, and all amounts to $3,043,734, which would appropriate that much fund balance from the general fund to provide for those losses in revenue and increased expenditures.
Anyone on the council have any questions for Richard about any of those shortfalls in revenue or increased expenses?
Yes, Richard, what is that as a percentage of the budget? Is that like, what, 15%?
It's close to 15%. I believe the budget is 23,106,000. So it's 13.2%.
Last week, we talked about a $3.5 million budget shortfall, but that number's been reduced somewhat. We asked Mr. Marks to weigh in on it, and he's come up, can you tell us what the exact figure is?
For the city's operating budget before this adjustment, 23,106,643.
Yeah, but what is the amount of reduction that we're seeking? 3
Well,
million?
It's not actually reduction. What it is a combination of reduced revenues and increased expenditures for $3,043,734.
Okay. So it's not quite as bad as we anticipated last week. We were looking at $3.5 million, and now we're down to roughly $3 million. So anybody have any questions about any of those numbers?
I got to question the numbers, but listening to Governor Cuomo today talking about not giving New York City a dime and the rest of the state because of his $15 billion cut that he's got to deal with, I think we're in for a tougher time from the state than it appeared. And then listen to Kim Davis reading what she wrote. She's talking about, she's laying out a pretty dire scenario about sales tax revenue. And so what happens if we make this and the projections are worse 2 months from now?
Well, what I would recommend is that we start next month at our next finance committee meeting to review our assumptions and see how they're panning out. There's a chance that we've overestimated the loss in revenue and the increase in expense. And, we may discover immediately that things are not as terrible as we thought. Or on the other hand, we may discover immediately that things are worse than we thought. So we try to be very, very conservative here, as I described to you last week, and look at what we think is a pretty rosy, optimistic picture, but because, we don't want to eliminate positions or, end city services unnecessarily, but we do believe at this time that this is the right figure. This roughly $3 million is the right figure.
I'm comfortable with that. What I'm hearing you say is that we probably will review this on a monthly basis or something like that, to do your reassessment every month and determine options that we would have at that point.
That will be a standing agenda item on the finance committee meeting each month.
Thank
for
you.
us to review our assumptions and make adjustments if necessary. And I agree with you, Ira. The picture may be more dire than we're talking about, but at least we're starting. We're making an effort to make sure that the city remains solvent throughout this coronavirus crisis.
And I guess the converse is true too. If it turns out to not be as bad, then we can make adjustments in a month.
Absolutely. Some people say that we're going to open up the country next week or in 2 weeks, and suddenly the stock market's going to rebound. And if that happens, then we've overestimated the problem. And we certainly can make adjustments at that time.
All right, and so what we basically been talking about, sorry, Mike.
I'm sorry, Patrick, would you repeat that, please?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize you were still talking. I'm getting a lot of lag. So I understand that the number that you, Richard, and the finance committee have come up with is 3 million in cuts. Do we have rough ideas, specific ideas, any ideas of how that would be accomplished? I mean, we're talking a little over 13% of the budget. So that's pretty drastic. Obviously, I'm not naive enough to know that wouldn't require staffing cuts as well. Do we have a plan?
Yes.
A rough idea? What do we got?
Yes, we do. We have a list of employees who will be temporarily laid off. And I emphasize temporarily because a layoff is not a termination. And a layoff is with the expectation that when things improve, we bring these people back. And we remove, today we lay off employees who we believe are non-essential. And we keep the employees employed who we believe are essential to day-to-day operations of the city. And, you know, we've worked with the mayor, Jeff and I and Richard have worked with the mayor to come up with a list that we think meets those requirements, that we're eliminating non-essential jobs, but we're keeping, you know, essential employees working, and hopefully we can bring back all employees at some point.
So you're talking about temporary furlough of people. Other than that, what sort of budget cuts are we talking? Any other line items?
We have found some savings that we can institute almost immediately that are not personnel cuts, and I think Richard has a list of those also.
Yeah, those amount to about 277,000. I'm still reviewing those because the list that was put together, there was assumptions made about how much could be cut, but in going down those accounts, some of it's already been consumed with actual expenditures and not just encumbrances. So I'm adjusting those totals, but so far, 277, 247 would apply to the general fund, and 433,000 would apply to other funds. As far as position cuts, the list that's been determined so far would amount to 751,000 in general fund recovered cost, total 1,812,000 across the board, meaning other funds would be 1,061,000. So based on the numbers I've looked at, with the proposed position layoffs and the $277,000 worth of expense cuts, and if we were able to, at this point, justify no longer funding rec complex and library for the remainder of the year, we'd be able to propose cuts that would recover about half of the $3 million, about $1,503,000.
So wait, just so I understood you correctly, that anticipates leaving the rec complex and the library closed for the rest of the year, and we're still only coming up there with about 1.5 million of the 3 million that you're anticipating a shortfall.
Correct. The positions that have been identified in the general fund amount to 26 positions. And like I said, that with benefits for the remainder of the year is only $751,000. Now remember, when you say you have a $3 million problem, that's going to cover the rest of this year. It's only 8 months. And when you say you want to make cuts, you look at the annual payroll for these positions, but you have to factor it down for the 8 months remaining. So the recouping is going to be a little bit more difficult than the prediction of the lost revenue and the increased expenses. Obviously, those are just estimates, but the members of the finance committee believe those are the best estimates at this point in time to project the budget deficit. So far with identified cuts, and like I said, not expending another monthly contribution to rec complex or to library for the rest of the year, it would amount to $1,503,000 of cuts that would go towards recouping the $3,043,734 budget increases. That's in the general fund alone. There's a second budget adjustment that's being proposed for tonight that affects the rest of the funds, because the assumptions also increase the costs for state retirement and health insurance across the board for all the funds, and also are reducing the parking revenue by $108,000. So there's a combined roughly I think it's $600,000 that we're proposing to take out of all the other funds. Rec complex, $18,333, $111,952 from parking, $101,040 from water, $154,856 sewer, $35,472 library, and $197,296 in MLD. And once again, these are from the assumptions that the healthcare isn't going to go up 10% and retirement's going to go up 35%. And there'll be $108,000 of lost parking permits and fees. So those also have to be adjusted, and the recouping of those is also looked at through position recoveries.
Now, you may have answered my next two questions there. And that was how many people and what about benefits? Because I know in this country we have our employees' benefits, namely health insurance, are tied to their employment. So you said 26 people are being envisioned being furloughed here temporarily, but that they, am I to understand that they might be able to keep their benefits during that period?
During a layoff, they wouldn't. The total number of positions across the board is 62. The total positions in the general fund is 26. And when they're laid off, they wouldn't retain their benefits. Now, obviously, they could go on unemployment, which would supplement their income. And right now, there's a $600 surplus unemployment benefit that's coming from the federal government that's going to be covered 100% for the cost of it and the administration of it. I believe right now that's factored for 13 weeks. I don't know if it's longer than that. We're going to have to determine that. We're also in the process of trying to determine if the basic unemployment benefit, which can be as high as $504 a week, will also be covered by federal stimulus package reimbursements. We want to determine if we're going to be charged for anything when it comes to unemployment, because the city is a direct pay. And if someone goes on unemployment, usually it's a direct pay for their benefits week by week.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask. Last week you did say we have the direct pay for unemployment. So that must cut against any savings that would happen from furloughing employees if we're paying out the basic unemployment, correct?
That's right. It's my understanding from what I've read in general, and there's a lot of federal information out there that I've been going through and Julie's been going through, that it sounds like the unemployment is to be covered entirely. But we want to get confirmation from the state that we're not going to be charged for that basic amount for the weekly unemployment. We know that the Fed is saying they're covering the $600 supplement.
So if a person has to be laid off, this is a not inopportune time to do that. Okay, okay. Thank you, Beth. Sorry about that. The, uh, the annual income of a person receiving 504 plus $600 a week is about $55,000 a year. So for some of our employees, that's less than than they make, when they're working, but it's also not a bad way to make it through this period. And to be honest with you, I don't know how long that's going to last, how long the federal government's going to be able to subsidize those kind of payments. But for the immediate future, for the next 4 months, that is the situation.
The average payroll for the 62 positions on the list is about 41,000. To give you an idea of what level they're going to be at, there's quite a few that are under the 55,000. I would have to say at least 80% of them are under the $55,000 figure from what I'm looking at. Anyway, the average is 40,728 for the 62 positions that have been identified.
Okay.
And cutting 62 positions, that's a very large amount of the workforce. What kind of cuts in services are we talking? I mean, obviously, Rich said the library and the rec complex being closed for the rest of the year. I don't know how long this situation might last. Clearly, we're hearing things like 18 months. When the lockdown started, we were hearing 4 months. Who knows how long it could be? But I'm interested in what other services are being cut. We have a chance to open the beach again this year. I mean, right now, I would say it's obviously too cold. Usually we aim for, the first day of summer, June 21st. That's likely not going to happen. But I'm thinking mid-July, the governor tells us we're allowed to open the beach, and the city of Plattsburgh's incapable of doing that because we just have no one that's been, hiring lifeguards or getting lifeguards trained or setting up for such a possible eventuality, then that could be problematic as well.
Well, I think once you decide that the rest of the year, the rec complex and library locations will be closed, the beach wouldn't be an option then at that point. You're absolutely right. There's just not going to be enough time to recover if somebody says in a week you can open the beach. If we've already decided the rec complex is done for the year, as well as the library, it's going to be very hard to open those. It'd be easier to open the library than obviously open the beach because of the ancillary people you need to have on staff that wouldn't have been hired or trained or even considered with the rec complex being closed.
So this work that we have today is really, really difficult because we're being asked to be scientists as well as economists and managers of a city. And I've never known of anyone ever having to have all three of those roles at one time, but this is what we're being asked to do, and we really have to do it. So you have to understand the COVID-19 pandemic. You have to know what educated people are saying about how long this thing is going to last, and you have to rely on their judgments. Um, economists are telling us that the ripple effects of this pandemic could last well into 2022. So I guess my point is that we have to, as a council, as a team, we have to act. And the decisions that we make, hopefully we're basing those on our opinion of the science, our opinion of the economics, and our opinion of the realities of day-to-day operations of city government. And I believe that the best way we can do that at this point is go ahead and let 1/4 of our workforce, or 62 people, go home. And unfortunately, we may have to revisit this. I believe uh, Chamberlain Marks just told us that we're not going to make the $3 million in cuts that we anticipated. We're still about $1 million short, as I understand it, but we have to start somewhere. You
Let
know,
me, that would be 1.5 million short. I got
$1
$1,504,000 of
okay.
rough recoveries versus 3,043,000. So it's about half.
Just, just to
1,500,000.
just to let our fellow counselors know, this has been a really, really difficult exercise for Jeff and I and Mayor and Richard also. We've worked on this night and day for this week, and um, we believe at this point this is the best way to go. We believe that, you know, going ahead and laying off these 62 employees is a necessary thing, but it may not be the end. It may be that we have to come back together in a few weeks and say, we didn't do enough. We have to do more. Or, you know, hopefully in the next few weeks, we'll discover the coronavirus has subsided or is in the process of subsiding, and maybe everything is going to work out. But to be honest with you, I personally, you know, reading the science, reading the economics, watching my city government operate, I don't believe that we have any cause to be optimistic. Uh, realism is what we need here. So if you know, if anybody wishes to dispute that, please do. You know, that's what it comes down to. It's our understanding of science, our understanding of economics, and our understanding of day-to-day operations of the city. And all those things have to intersect for us to make intelligent decisions here.
I like to clarify, and I think somebody had mentioned that some of these things that you've been discussing will be closed for the year. I don't think that's the case. Some of the things that we've discussed are required to be closed by state law right now. And I think you used the term that some people be sent home. The vast majority of the people being discussed are actually have been sent home and have been home for quite some time already. But as soon as we can resume certain operations might make a lot of sense to resume earlier, like the library. Other operations, if we're halfway through the summer, it's not going to make sense to open up the beach for the other half because we just won't have any access to lifeguards at that point, to be honest. And then still other operations, by the time we get to the end of these pause orders from the governor, it may be too late to either organize or hold the events. Like, for instance, I ask you to make a determination on some things like, what are we going to do with the marina? What are we going to do with the beach? What are we going to do with July 4th? I think we've got some time to figure out what to do with Battle of Plattsburgh. But all the other ones require us to plan or have already planned and invested significant amounts already by now this time of year. So some of those all need to be made pretty quickly, but some of the other things hopefully would come back online quickly enough as well, as soon as the governor frees us up to do some of the things that we're not allowed to do currently. And yet are still some of the services that the public has come to actually.
Sorry. Does anyone have any other thoughts on what else we can do? I mean, how are we going to come up with $3 million and not raise taxes by 33% or whatever we're anticipating? I don't. I'm at a loss here. I feel like the only thing we can do right now is reduce positions.
Are we engaging in any retirement buyouts? Any, you know, people that are close to retirement might be anticipating retiring soon. Um, any discussions such as those have gone, discussions like that gone on?
Yes, we have discussed that. And if, you know, if anyone in this group decides that retirement is, you know, a better option for them, then yes, we will certainly act on that, Patrick.
Another positive that we have, the $3,034,000 adjustment to the budget is not going to have that total impact because we've already budgeted for 2020 to develop a $688,000 surplus. Keeping the numbers the same as they are in those categories that develop that surplus and then just adjust the 3,034,000 out, it's only a net deficit predicted for adding the 3,043,000 loss of revenue and increased expenses. It brings it down to 2,355,000. So, you know, what we said before about being $1.5 million short, if the surplus still would be developed based on the other revenue items and the other expense items, and even reducing expense items, you know, we're not going to see the total impact of that 3 million crush our fund balance by the end of the year if we don't recover at all.
Did everyone understand that? We do anticipate a small surplus at the end of the year. That is in our budget. So that may come into play toward helping us achieve this $3 million in savings we're looking for.
Well, I just wanted to say, Mike, you know, unfortunately, we live in New York State where the coronavirus has affected us way more than anyone else in the country at this point. And we're just going to have to live through these times. I know it's unfortunate and it's something none of us really relish doing, but we have to maintain the city as best we can with what we have. And it's just not going to be good. I really sympathize with everyone who helping is going to lose their jobs temporarily, but hopefully we can get things going again as soon as possible, and hopefully the state can recover with not too much fanfare. But we cannot wait till the end of the year to do anything. We just could not ask the taxpayers to pay the kind of money that we would be short. So we have to work with what we have. And it's unfortunate, like I said, that we're in this situation, but we will have to live through it, and I know we will.
Yeah. Yep. Part of our role as economists, as I mentioned earlier, is to understand the unemployment rate and where that's going. And it looks like it's going through the roof. I read some information today that said we may be approaching Great Depression unemployment levels and maybe even exceeding those. So we can't ask members of our community who are unemployed, who don't have a job, to pony up some more money for their taxes next year. I just couldn't do that. And I think most of you feel that way as well. But it's tough, like Jeff says, but you know, we have no choice but to plow through it. We love our city and we love everything it stands for. We're going to get through this somehow. We are. I know that. Are there any other questions and concerns? Let me just tell you that in the next few minutes, I'll send you the resolution for staff reductions and you can take a look at it. We also have another resolution that Mr. Marks presented to us. It just has to do with adjusting funds in the rec complex, the parking fund, the water fund, the sewer fund, and we'll need to vote on that one also, correct, Mr. Marks?
Yes, that's right. Once again, it's just to adjust all the funds for the cost increases expected in retirement and healthcare and loss of parking revenue.
And the council hasn't seen that one yet either, so would you mind sending that one to them, please?
I can do that right now. Well, maybe I should send it to the mayor and Beth so they can forward it.
I
Yeah,
have it. I'll forward it right now.
Okay,
okay, thank you, Beth.
that's right. I did send it to Beth already.
All right, and I'll go ahead and send you the resolution, send the council the resolution for the staff reductions.
I have the position list for the last set of adjustments that the mayor sent to me at about, what, 2 or 3 o'clock this afternoon? So I can send you that. And I've highlighted where we changed positions and, took some out and put some back in.
I think that list is attached to the resolution I'm about to send, Richard, so.
But are you certain you have the final, though? I'll send you this one just to make sure, because I was still adjusting this as this meeting was starting.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Would you mind sending that one to the mayor and Beth and let them forward it on to the council?
I'll do that. In fact, it's already done.
Okay. Well, I think that concludes all the agenda items and the new business for the Finance Committee meeting. Anyone have any other new business?
I was just going to add one thing that, in order to have these 62 positions abolished and, accomplished, it's going to take some time, probably a couple of weeks to 3 weeks, especially with the unions wanting to review what's being done, and civil service will weigh in on it very heavily too. So there's going to be some work to be done on that, but it's not going to happen overnight. And that's why we're looking at, anything that this list will produce in savings has got to be May forward.
Yes, that reminds me of something I wanted to remind the council, that we have to provide 7 days notice to the unions that we're about to perform layoffs in the various unions. So that'll have to be done first. We'll have to have a conversation with civil service as well. So before this all shakes out, it may take a month. So that's why it is important for us to act on it today, because of the length of time it's going to take. Every week that we wait, we lose about $90,000 out of the general fund, and that increases. That's a tax increase of 0.9%. So, that those 0.9% would add up quickly. So we need to act quickly.
I ask a question then on that. If this resolution goes through this evening, the newspapers are going to be all over this. So do we have a plan to go, how we're going to, some kind of a one-pager or something that is going to be able to be made available, not just to the news media, but perhaps, Mayor, you're going to be meeting with the union or something tomorrow, or all the unions, to give them a personal briefing on this, as hear the facts in terms of why this is happening. And then, a whole set of steps, I would assume, are going to have to be put in place to figure out how this moves forward and have a consistent message across departments. And if I get a phone call, or whoever gets a call on this, that it's important that we get this, a clear message and succinct message, I think, that goes out on this.
Well, Ira, I have thought about that. I haven't taken any action as far as, putting anything on paper, but I do think we need a unified response to the press, and to anyone else, and to our employees. And I think it's real important for us and for our department heads to let our employees know this is not the end of the world. We're going to get through this, and we're going to come out on the other side.
Well, they'll certainly feel like it's the end of the world, believe me. And so we have to be very careful that maybe a hard decision for us, but to them, it's not a hard decision for us. It's a hard decision for them that they're taking the brunt of this.
Absolutely.
And, I am more than willing to come over and work all day tomorrow if need be to help you and whoever else to lay out the step-by-step. What do we have to do with civil service? What do we have to do with the unions? What do we have to do to contact the state health insurance programs, and what an individual that's laid off is going to need to do to get on that program, and how long that's going to take, and a whole series of things like that I think at least when the layoff actually occurs, we can hand them something that says, well, one, here's a contact number and a person in the city hall that you can call if you can't figure out how to get something done, and we'll help you with this. And then secondly, here's the information, and maybe we can be a bridge over with a state agency that helps for healthcare access, to help them know that this is going to be coming, and how do we work with them to ensure that the people that are laid off here can get in a timely manner around healthcare. But anyway, there's a whole series of things like that. I think if we put the packet together, at least the individuals that are going to be laid off will have some guidance as to what they can do, when their last paycheck's coming, all kinds of things like that, that we ought to put together in terms of a package for people. So I'm more than happy to help in any way I can to work on that.
That's very helpful. I think the most difficult thing is, well, first of all, a number of these people are already laid off. The school crossing guards, for instance, haven't been working for probably a month now, and that's the single largest group here, I think. There's a number of positions that are simply not going to go filled. So we're not talking about laying off 62 people. The list is actually quite a bit smaller than that. But we won't know who the individuals are for some time. It's really up to the unions to make those determinations. It's their right and it's in their collective bargaining agreements to make those determinations. So we'll just have to really work with the unions as close as we possibly can to identify the individuals ultimately, then work with the individuals once we reach that point.
However, just to clarify, we are abolishing 62 positions. That's what the request is going to be through civil service.
So I'm confused. Is there a resolution on for tonight to abolish 62 positions, or is that coming up like next week?
It's coming tonight. I just emailed it to you so you can take a look at it.
Yeah, Beth emailed me. Emailed it to me. I'm taking a look at it now.
I think at this point we should move the resolutions forward for the general meeting. So I'd like to make the motion that we do that.
Mike, we didn't, excuse me, you didn't state the resolutions, because the only one that's showing up is the one Richard first sent us. So the second one, and then if you're going to abolish the positions, none of these are spelled out on the committee agenda, so I would think we would need to say those out loud.
Okay.
Right, they could be moved.
do the other two maybe as new business during the general meeting?
It's up to you. If that's, I don't know, is that okay, Dean?
I was just reading the document. What did you say?
Mike was just going to enter, since the other two resolutions did not show up on the finance committee agenda, he was just going to enter them in under new business under the regular agenda. Is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to read it word for word. I mean, if no one's seen it yet. But
Okay.
yeah, I mean, it's through the agenda, you know, within the next 2 minutes. I mean, through this committee structure within the past 2 minutes. So yeah.
So Beth, would you be willing to read the additional agenda items?
Well, I have the second one. Do you have the wording for the resolution to abolish
Oh.
positions?
I hope I sent it to you, Beth. I certainly intended to. Let me check here. No, I did not. So I'm going to send that to you right now, Beth.
Okay.
Why is it an abolishment of positions if we're laying people off with the intention of having them return? Because if we abolish them, then wouldn't we have to then create the position again? Oh, these people are returning.
That's correct. We would abolish them and then reestablish them.
Well, why would we have to do that?
The civil service conducts it that way.
That's a civil service thing, Colin. They make us abolish the positions and then reinstate them when those employees come back to work.
That way.
The process that you were describing is more like a furlough, which I think you said the county confirmed was not able to be done, either with county employees or the city employees. At least that's what I believe was said, what was it, Monday that we met?
Yes, yeah, we met Monday and Wednesday. But it is 5:30 and we should wrap up this meeting unless there are no other questions or
But you still
concerns.
have to read the resolution in.
Pardon me?
I think you would still have to read the resolution in if you want to move to the council meeting for tonight.
Well, we're going to do it in new business, Patrick, and we'll ask Beth to read it as an item of new business, and then we can move it to a vote.
Are you able to do it that way? Because then you'd have to invoke Rule 4, right? If you do it in new business now, you just move it to the agenda.
Okay, you want to do it in new business now? That's fine. We can do that. That makes sense.
I didn't get the resolution yet, Mike.
Geez, Beth, sorry. I got to hit send, Beth.
So you're just going to have a motion to move that one item, and then under new business, under the committee meeting, you're going to add the second two?
No, as an item of new business, we'll move these two new resolutions to the regular agenda tonight.
Okay. But we didn't move the first item. We haven't done that vote.
Okay, we can do that now if you would like.
Okay.
I make the motion to move that first item, that first budget resolution, to the general meeting agenda.
I'll second that.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Reed?
Yes.
Now, as an item of new business, I'd like to move two additional agenda items to the general meeting. And would you like for me to read those?
Sure. You want me to,
Okay.
or you? You just grab.
I'll read them this time and you can read them next time, Beth.
Okay.
That's okay. So the first one is request from the city chamberlain to amend the 2020 budgets for the rec complex fund, the parking fund, the water fund, the sewer fund, the library fund, and the MLD fund by a combined $618,949 in reduced estimated revenues and increased appropriations for the projected financial impact of the coronavirus lockdown, which will increase these funds' appropriated fund balance or surplus by a combined amount of $618,949. So I will make the motion that we move that to the general meeting for a vote tonight.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Mike, aren't you putting both on under new business?
Pardon?
Weren't you putting both the resolutions on under new business?
No, we're gonna now move them to the general meeting, for a vote tonight, Beth.
Okay, the second one you just sent me, the positions,
Yes,
you haven't read that one yet.
I haven't read it yet.
Okay, so we should do them both under new business and then move them both.
We're doing them under new business now so that we can move them to the general meeting agenda and vote on them as part of the general meeting.
Okay, I just didn't hear you read the second one yet.
I didn't.
Oh, okay.
It's a little lengthy, so, maybe with the council's permission, I'll just go ahead and move it or recommend that it be moved, and then we can read it in its entirety during the regular meeting. Would that be acceptable? So I'll make a motion that we move this second agenda item to the regular meeting without a reading at this time, but with a reading during the general meeting.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
On that.
I'll make that motion, Mike.
Oh, okay, you make the motion, Jeff? Okay, and I'll second it.
Counselor Kelly,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Mayor Reed,
Yes.
Okay, so now we'll have 3 agenda items to discuss and vote on tonight. Council, I apologize for the sort of discombobulation that we appear to be in. We've never done this before, and hopefully we'll never have to practice doing it again. But hopefully you're patient and you can understand that this is a very difficult thing we're doing, and we've changed it every half hour or so throughout the day today. So this is where we stand now, and we believe we're in a good position. So thank you for your patience.
Thanks, Counselor, for putting a moratorium on any more changes after 2 o'clock today. I appreciate that.
Yeah. We can only handle so many changes. So with that, I'll make a motion to close the Finance Committee meeting.
Second that.
Counselor Kelly,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Mayor Reed,
Yes. Begin the common council meeting for this evening with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to
United States.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Reed,
Present.
Counselor Barbell,
Present.
Counselor Kelly,
Here.
Counselor Gibbs,
Here.
Counselor DeDominicis.
Here.
Counselor McFarland,
Here, if you didn't hear me, I don't know.
Counselor Moore,
Here.
If everybody can make sure they're muted. We are starting to get an echo for some reason. Obviously, this is an incredibly difficult time we're facing economically, as we've been discussing in the Finance Committee up till now, but I think the most difficult challenge we have is to our health. You all know that three of our, probably our city residents, although we're still trying to determine that, have perished already in this terrible pandemic. We have one building quarantined, and I think you're going to hear very soon developments on another quarantine of some of our most vulnerable population. The city of Plattsburgh hasn't experienced anything like this in obviously any of our lifetime, and perhaps going back over 100 years for the history of Plattsburgh, perhaps ever. So maybe in the last pandemic back in 1918. So even though we're dealing with some incredibly difficult and uncertain times economically, and I know the council is very resolved to make some sort of steps, at least initial steps, to protect our city and our taxpayers, and ultimately the viability of the city for all of our workers. And we don't know where those steps will bring us exactly in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Many of these things are going to be not our decision, but decisions of other entities that we're going to be working with. But I do want you to know that all those difficulties really do pale in comparison to the sacrifices people are making in their health. And I am incredibly proud of our community in doing so many things so early that I absolutely am certain saved so many lives. You know, we're at the confluence. Have a large New York City population in our city because of our college here. We have a large Montreal population in our city because of our proximity to the second largest city in Canada. Both those regions are being hit by the coronavirus harder than any other area in their entire countries. And for us to be hit only as hard as we have been, and it's been tragically hard, as you know, is really a testament to our residents. You probably already know that we were the first city to declare many things, like social distancing. We're the first city to close our gym and our rec center and our library and our city hall, and first city to send people home. First city to maintain social distancing and move all of our meetings online. The first city to ask for a voluntary curfew, and the first city to impose the face masking standards in our state and our country. And because of these big sacrifices that we took very early on, I'm really hopeful that we can protect ourselves from the worst health consequences of this. I think we've really done an awful lot to hold this terrible pandemic at bay. You know, because we were able to get on this between 2 and 3 weeks earlier. A recent study shows if you can act on these things between 2 weeks earlier than others, you can save 90% of the deaths, and we've managed to do that here. So this could have been so much worse, but for the efforts of our residents and really being vigilant with social distancing. What we can't do is protect ourselves from the economic effects. That's going to wash over everybody in this country and around the world, regardless of what we do with social distancing. And like our social distancing and our preparation for the pandemic from the health dimension, it seems like this council has been also willing to do their analytics and make their determinations to protect the city and ultimately its long-term viability and its workers' financial health at the same time, probably better than most are contemplating this early. I think most everybody is trusting hope that things will get better quickly, and it's very difficult to make steps to ensure that we have the greatest likelihood of success. But I think when we look back on this 6 months later, just like in the various things we've decided to do on the health arena, the various very difficult things we're deciding to do to take advantage of all the federal and state programs being offered right now to protect our livelihood and our workers, probably will, as painful as it seems right now, probably do an awful lot to protect our ability to pay wages in the next 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months. And I have more confidence that this city has figured out and will figure out how to maintain its sustainability over the next 6 months to, as the governor says, maybe as many as 18 months, than just about any other city or municipality around, because we're willing to think about this and make such difficult decisions and take such early steps so early. I'm sure it's going to uh, will appear to have been very good steps to have taken, as hard as they seem right now. So I thank you all for that. It's an unenviable position we've been placed in, but I'd much rather be doing this than trying to simply rely on hope to get us through. So as difficult as it is, thank you. Please continue.
Beth, I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss specific employee um,
We lost you there, Patrick.
Patrick, we can't hear you. If you would say that again, please.
It looks like we aren't able to retrieve Patrick. Maybe he'll try dialing in. Dean, can I ask you, legal counsel, is there any grounds for an executive session at this time?
If I didn't hear the end of his motion, so I don't want to presume what he was saying. So I would want to let Pat finish before we make the determination.
sorry, I got kicked off. Can you hear me?
Can hear you now.
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to go into executive session to talk about some potential issues for litigation and talk about the employment of a specific person.
Is there a second for that motion? Seeing none, please continue.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on April 8th, 2020 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by, and please raise your hand, Councilor Barbell, and second by Councilor Moore. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending April 15th, 2020 in the amount of $56,578.66 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Kelly and second by Councilor Bell. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. At this time, I can entertain any reports from various council you have in your package of reports. Any additional reports from Governance, Councilor Barbell? Councilor Barbell, you're muted.
Finally. Just an update, very brief, on the Climate Smart Communities grant that was recently awarded to the city. I had a nice report come back from Ethan from our request to get that, and the state has sent in all the forms and information to pursue that grant. And their next step for the Community Development Office is to prepare an updated work plan and budget. And if this grant can continue in spite of the COVID-19 pandemic, they should be able to move ahead. Most of the work is going to be connected with department staff and mostly conducted through email, phones, or through teleconferencing options. There is a public role at the end of the process, and that will be a number of months out. So we'll probably be looking closer to late summer, early fall. And at that point, we will look to see what our options are in terms of public input and review of the findings from the greenhouse gas initiative. So it looks like that's on track, and we'll be able to continue to go forward in spite of the current situation that we're in. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Moore, City Infrastructure.
I don't have anything new to report at this time.
Finance and Budget, Councilor Kelly.
Just had our meeting, so nothing new to report.
Public Safety, Councilor Gibbs.
I don't have anything to report. We will be having our monthly meeting next week. And it's possible that Ira and I are going to ask for some meetings with the chiefs. So I'll make that request through Beth, but other than that, I have no updates.
Plattsburgh Public Library, Councilor Dominicus.
Nothing at this time.
And MLD Board President, Councilor McFarland.
Nothing to update.
Resolved, reports as listed are hereby ordered received, and any written reports are placed on file among the public records of the City Clerk's office. Moved by Councilor D. Dominicus and second by Councilor Barbell. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Passed. No correspondence for recommendation from boards this time. Please continue.
Resolved that the bills audited by the Common Council for the week ending April 17th, 2020 in the amount of $546,903.88 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Kelly and second by Councilor Moore. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. It's now an opportunity for members of the public to please address the council. I don't think there's any members of the public in person here today. Let's give it a moment on the, let's see if there's anybody who'd like to join via chat. Beth, are you seeing anybody on your end who's wishing to join?
No?
Okay, please continue.
3 items were added during the Finance and Budget Committee. Item 7A, request from City Chamberlain to amend the 2020 general fund budget by $3,043,734 in reduced estimated revenues and increased appropriations for the projected financial impact of the coronavirus lockdown, which will increase the general fund appropriated fund balance by $3,043,734.
Moved by Councilor Kelly and second by Councilor Barbell. Discussion.
Well, all of these, there's 3 resolutions now on the agenda, right? Am I correct?
Yes,
Yes,
you're
there
correct.
will be 3.
And they're all intimately related, correct?
Yes, they're related.
And right now, the third one still hasn't even been read in, correct? That was the one that was passed to be read later?
That is correct.
So I mean, I have a lot of questions. One, Richard said that these positions would be removed. Um, Now, if a department head is removed, how does that affect the department? Is there still a department existing just without a department head? Do you have to label an interim partner head? Sorry, department head, and things of that nature.
When a department head is removed, the acting department head is the mayor. Like if a police chief were to retire, the acting police chief becomes the mayor, same with the fire chief. So any department head, the acting department head is the mayor if there's a department head removed or retires or leaves or dies or whatever.
Yeah, I still think that as a term of art, I don't know if abolishment is the right word because, for instance, we know that there's some positions that the union is going to decide whether who in that position is actually going to be laid off, right? So that position is not being abolished. That position still exists. The number of people staffing that position may change. So we're making staffing changes. We're not abolishing positions in any regard. We have every expectation to bring everybody back as soon as we can.
So I guess to clarify then, if there's only one position though, wouldn't that position be abolished? My understanding from Richard or someone said earlier that the positions have to be abolished according to civil service. So we are, in fact, we are abolishing the positions, either in number of positions or if it's only one position, that position is then abolished. Am I misunderstanding?
No, that's correct. The process is to abolish the positions, and then if people are to be brought back to work or positions to be recreated, then they're reestablished.
How do we abolish a laborer in, say, the DPW? You know, if we reduce staffing from 4 laborers to 3 laborers, we haven't abolished the position by any means.
Our understanding of civil service rules says that in order to lay people off, we have to abolish their positions. That is a formality. It is our responsibility and privilege to be able to reestablish these positions anytime we wish and bring back any number of people we wish.
But that means that, for instance, if you just use an example, to abolish one police officer means we have to lay off all police officers because we're abolishing that position. And that defies logic.
There's positions that the city has for every job, and there has to be a position in order for a person to be employed and to occupy that position. If a person is to be laid off, that position is abolished. Not all positions, just one.
Right.
And they're all numbered, they're all controlled, they're all monitored. If they're vacant positions, they get eliminated by civil service at the end of 4 years anyway. But the abolishment of the positions is the process that they're going to ask us to follow. If that can be done any differently by saying we're going to temporarily lay off people, make them part-time or something like that to prevent abolishing the positions, we'll certainly try that. But my understanding is the positions have to be abolished to.
And I guess then another question would be, if we're abolishing positions, aren't we not removing departments if we're abolishing positions from those? I guess I have questions like, if we remove if a facility is closed so everyone can't work. I'm sorry if I'm not articulating this properly. I'm trying to understand. If we abolish the positions that are associated with that, wouldn't that abolish a department if all of the people are laid off?
No. As Richard said, each position is unique. Even though 7, 8, 10, 12 people may have the same job title. Each of those positions is considered unique. So, in the eyes of the civil service, that is what we must do. We must eliminate or abolish individual positions. I, I would advise the council not to get too hung up on that because, as I said before, it's our responsibility and privilege to bring those employees back when the time comes. And that's exactly what we hope to do. So to say that a position is abolished, it does sound terrible, like maybe that position will never be resumed, but it's completely up to us. And I imagine if you think of our role over the next several months or possibly even a couple of years, we will be doing a lot of this. We will be making adjustments to budgets in terms of abolishing and reestablishing positions. I don't think we're looking at the end of this. I think we're going to have to get somewhat used to this and use and be comfortable with the terminology that civil service requires us to use. Abolishment is just
Just
a
to
word.
clarify, I think we're abolishing position numbers. We're not abolishing titles.
That is
Title
correct.
of a department head still exists.
As Mr. Marks just told us, each of the positions has a number, and you're abolishing a position number. You're absolutely right, Mayor. It's a good clarification.
Yeah, the way you would have to abolish a department head title would be to change it in the city charter. Say we're no longer going to have a police chief, or no longer going to have a fire chief.
And then one other point of clarification, we're not even abolishing individual position numbers. You're proposing reductions in the number of people occupying a certain title. Since, for instance, if there is, using that example of DPW, if there's 4 laborers in DPW, it's not up to us to determine which of those 4 laborers is affected by this. That's going to be a union determination. So we can't even abolish that particular position number associated with that particular laborer. We're simply reducing the number of people associated with that title.
And if there's only one in that, where the title still exists in the city, that title doesn't go away?
Right, if there's a 1-to-1 between the title and a unique position number, that would be different. That's right. The title still exists, but it's no longer occupied at that moment.
Now I see there's members of the library included on there. Doesn't the library board of trustees have control over them? I'm just, Rich, do you know about that?
It's my understanding that the board makes those decisions, so that's going to be something to be discussed with the board.
That's exactly right. We have no authority to remove people from their positions.
Well, I guess on this, I have a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions about how other stakeholders might be affected, how services will be affected. Clearly, we talked about the beach a little today. And I'm not saying this isn't the right move. From what Rich was saying, it may not even be enough. As Mike, was saying as well, we're talking about this resolution that I think we're currently discussing is talking about 3,043,700 something, and we're talking estimated savings of around 1.5 million. So we're not even halfway there. So I understand this is very significant and a very serious, and it could very well be necessary to do. However, this is obviously very serious for it's gonna be very serious for 62 people. It's gonna be very serious for families. We're talking about people losing health insurance in the middle of a pandemic. And part of me is just a little uncomfortable doing so. I mean, I'm reading the Excel sheet right now on my phone that I got, minutes ago, or well, now a little over like 40 minutes ago. I am a little concerned that the public wasn't made aware of it, hasn't had maybe the time to log in and write a comment and chip in. So just with that in mind, I will make a motion to table this resolution.
Moved by Councilor McFarland, second.
I'll second that. I agree with Patrick.
Second by Councilor DeDominicis. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Roll call on the motion to table. Barbell, Counselor Barbell,
No.
Counselor Kelly,
No.
Counselor Gibbs,
Yes.
Counselor DeDominicis,
Yes.
Counselor McFarland,
Yes.
Counselor Moore.
No,
It's 3-3. Mayor Reed,
I'm going to vote no.
motion to table fails. You ready to vote on the resolution?
I think we're still in discussion, actually.
Is it still in discussion?
What is the repercussions of a week, I guess? I echo what Patrick is saying in terms of the gravity of both things, and I understand that everybody took a lot of time and energy in developing this, and I guess I just, in trying to sort of process all of this in a short amount of time, what is the, if this is moved to, I don't know, what is the repercussions of holding out for just a little bit?
My hesitation to wait, Paul, that doesn't make sense, does it? Hesitation to wait, but my reluctance to wait is it costs $90,000 a week for each week that we wait, we figured. And that is, you can look at that a couple different ways. That's an increase in taxes of 0.9% or almost 1%. So every week that we wait, we send the taxpayers another bill. And of course, we don't want to do that. Or another way to look at it is that's another couple of positions we may have to abolish the longer that we wait. So, in hindsight, I wish we could have done this a few weeks ago. I wish we could have voted to eliminate the recreation department job several weeks ago when it was first decided to close those facilities for a period of time. I wish we could have done the same with the library much sooner than we did, but the truth is this is where we are tonight, and we do need to act, in my opinion.
So the biggest question I have, though, is the issue with the direct pay unemployment. And, I know Richard, I think, said during the committee meeting that he wanted to, double check on that with the state, and that he was pretty sure that the federal government was picking up at the tab on the 600,000. So that, I guess, is my biggest question, because if the state's on hook for direct pay, are we saving? Are we really saving $90,000 in 1 week? I don't know, Richard, do you have any knowledge on that?
If the state is still going to charge the city for regular unemployment benefit, which is up to $500 a week, then you're right. The net savings will be lower than, just the amount of the payroll cost and elimination of FICA. It's going to be a net number that's going to be less than our $750,000 of projected general fund position cuts and FICA-related reductions. So we still have to determine that. And like I said, I'm optimistic from what I've read that it's all going to be forgiven for a fairly long period of time. We know the $600 a week supplement is definitely a stimulus program, and it's definitely covered by the federal government as well as all the administration of that particular supplement. I got to find out if that's more than 13 weeks in availability. Certainly, I'm thinking that there's going to be pressure to keep that coming out and paying people that so that they can remain alive, eating, paying their bills, and so forth. But we still don't have exact clarification on whether the basic benefit is going to be covered under this stimulus package.
I'd just like to add to this that, you know, this isn't going to go away. You know, I mean, that's the reality that we're in right now. Nobody wants to move forward and lay people off. But, you know, I'm not going to vote to raise taxes by 33% in this city, and I don't think any of you want to do that. So what's your choice? The bulk of the resource and the expenses are staff. We have got to reduce the budget, and we've got it. The sooner we do it, the fewer we have to reduce. If we wait another month to do this, we're going to cut more people. And that's the reality. It's not going to go away.
Well, that's my feelings also, is it just puts us in a position where we have to eliminate more jobs. I really can't be behind anything that creates more job loss. It's going to take weeks for this to happen. The sooner we start, the sooner it will be done. And we'll start recouping some of this money. It's not pleasant and it's not pretty, but that's what we need to do, and we need to be responsible.
Yeah, I think the best way to think of this is that, you know, we're not doing this to harm any one group or, you know, to better one group. Our goal is to save the city. You know, we enjoy a lot of amenities in this town that a lot of communities around us don't have. You know, lower electric rates. We're working very, very hard to make the city affordable for the average person to live in. And, you know, we're enjoying a tax rate that's somewhat reduced over the years compared to inflation. So we've made all this efforts to make our city livable and affordable, and we just can't let that slip through our fingers. You know, what would happen with a $3 million deficit this year is that we would become insolvent, basically. I don't believe there'd be any way we could recover from that. You know, if anybody else has a, you know, better idea, you please come forward with it. But I believe this is the very best that we can do at this juncture.
I think we should move forward with a vote.
I think that if this has become a divisive issue where the council is not united on this, this is going to be the first in a large number of very, very, very difficult decisions we're going to have to make in the next little while. Then when you reconsider this in another week's time, it's going to be more difficult then because it's going to be deeper then. But I don't think we can, as a council, afford to have this as the opportunity to be going on to a whole series of very difficult decisions we're going to be making in the next year, starting in on this evenly divided 3-3. So given that, if that's really the consensus of the council that you're deadlocked, I think we just try again next week. But ultimately, at some point, we're going to have to rally behind some idea to save the city. And I agree with most everything said. I, for one, will not suffer raising taxes on our citizens at this point, especially in these times. So I'm looking forward to the suggestions from you all that are going to unite this group. I think that a group made a valiant effort to do it, but clearly it has ended up dividing us. So maybe we'll rely on the group with another set of ideas for next week to save the city.
I'm with Elizabeth. I think we should proceed and vote.
I like 100% consensus also. It always feels so much better when each ward in the city is coming together to act together. But I think we do need to go ahead with the vote.
I'd like to hear before you choose to vote the solutions that councillors Dean Dominicus and McFarland and Gibbs have to offer at this time.
Well, I don't disagree. Of course, you know that, I've always been concerned about the fiscal health of the city, but I think that the spirit behind the motion that Patrick brought up and Paul seconded is not that they don't support the cuts. And so Patrick and Paul chime in if I'm wrong. It's not that we don't support the cuts, but the allocation of where the cuts are going to come from, we just got tonight. I knew that there were going to be cuts, but this is the first that we saw of it tonight. So I think that they were making that suggestion, not because they don't support the cuts, but I think that they were hoping to maybe get some time for the public to understand what the cuts are, what they mean. Paul and Patrick, I don't know if I'm capturing that appropriately, but please feel free to chime in.
No, that's exactly correct. And this may not even be the end of the cuts. Like I said, we're only halfway through. And it's not that I have a better solution. I may have some solutions, but for me to spout ideas right here off the top of my head, I think would be inconsiderate and disingenuous. But I agree with what Elizabeth's analysis of my position there is, that but my problem is not that I'm against this. My problem is not that I'm against doing it. My problem is that I understand the need for swift action. However, this is not something we can even be remotely flippant about. It's not something we can be cavalier about. It is a very serious decision.
I really resent that, Patrick. I'm not being cavalier or flippant about what's going on right now, and I think those are a poor choice of words.
Fair enough, but all I'm saying is that there's certain questions that I have on some of this stuff, and I haven't had the chance to process all of it. I've had the chance to process a bit of it, but I want to know what how certain stakeholders are going to react to certain things as well.
Well, I just want to say, I'm not going to be sitting here at the end of the year and telling the taxpayers of this city that I have to raise the taxes 20% or 30% because I was unable to act in a timely fashion. I think we have to have a respect for the people who are paying the freight here, that we're not going to go and shortchange them by sitting around and waiting for, more discussion. We know where we're at. They've added 2 more weeks to the shutdown in New York. What are we waiting for? We're here sitting on our hands while we're bleeding money. We can't do that. We will end up at the end of the year with some very unpleasant situations.
And I have concerns about what is it that you expect to come out of a public comment period on this? That they say don't cut anybody? That you want to get into determining which person gets cut? That's not our job as a council. Our job is to determine that the policy of the city requires that we have to reduce the budget. It's then up to the mayor and Richard and other people to look at how best do we figure out the most cost-effective way to do that to get to the point that we need to get to. I think they've done that. They've spent a lot of time. This isn't just this week that this has been going on. And I don't see where the public's going to, how is the public going to solve this for us or tell us, I don't want you to shut the library, I don't want you to shut the gym. I mean, I don't get it. I don't get where the public's going to come in on this and help us make a decision. So I'm at a loss on that.
Just one comment. I know I'm not a counselor and I shouldn't even weigh in at this point because you've got a good discussion going on. But one of the concerns is, providing of services. So the positions, and I think it's important to say positions and not people, the positions that are being considered lend a lot of question about, how will services continue in certain departments and maybe not others. So I think that that's one thing to look at when it comes to the positions, and that's the reason why the positions have been listed. And I believe that question was asked earlier, and there really wasn't a specific answer about consideration of continuation of services.
And that's why we should review this on a monthly basis. If there was a cut made that, that is impacting essential services being delivered, then we'll act on it. This is not the cuts for the rest of the year.
Well, it could be if you lose a person in this whole process and you can't get them back, then of course that does limit services because you're starting over. So that's just one consideration of being a stakeholder in a department for performing the operations necessary with the right amount of people, right-sized departments, and this takes that right size out of the equation.
I think we should move forward with a vote.
Further discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Barbell?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor DeDominicis?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Item 7B was added during the committee meeting. Request from the City of Chamberlain to amend the 2020 budgets for the Rec Complex Fund, the Parking Fund, the Water Fund, the Sewer Fund, the Library Fund, and the MLD Fund by a combined $618,949 in reduced estimated revenues and increased appropriations for the projected financial impact of the coronavirus lockdown, which will increase these funds' appropriated fund balance or surplus by a combined amount of $618,949.
Moved by Councilor Barbell, second by Councilor Kelly. Discussion. Mr. Marks, do you want to offer any potential explanation?
Any questions on this particular budget adjustment? Just the quick summary is that there's an increase expected and projected, estimated in state retirement and health insurance. This is the impact on all the other funds, in addition to considering $108,000 of lost parking fees and permit revenues.
When we talk about increasing the fund balance, that is in anticipation of losses down the line. So we're being proactive and assuming that, certain shortfalls are going to happen in revenue or increases in expenses, and therefore we're planning for that. And that's sort of what has been our method of operation for a few years now. Is when we anticipate trouble in the budget, we we act. I recall the firefighters, for example, we anticipated a lot of expenses in settling their contracts. So we put that money aside. Now, and I think that's in essence what we're doing here, correct?
Yeah, essentially it is. It's saying we're going to appropriate fund balance, meaning the equity that's in each of those funds, for additional appropriations on budget lines. And, you know, back to that boring topic, the primer on, you know, how government accounting works. You don't spend any money until you appropriate it. You have to have a budget because you can't just spend it. So this is putting appropriations, expense budget, on line items that are anticipated to increase. So therefore, you know, when it comes to spending the actual money, it'll be appropriated to the extent that we believe it's going to impact the budgets.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Barbell,
Yes.
Counselor Kelly,
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs,
Yes.
Counselor DeDominicis,
Yes.
Counselor McFarland, Counselor McFarland,
Yeah.
can't hear you.
Yes, sorry.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
item 7C was added during the committee meeting. Whereas the city of Plattsburgh and its surrounding region have been afflicted with the worst global pandemic since the Spanish flu of 1918 and 1919. And whereas the city of Plattsburgh and its civic government have taken steps to help ensure the safety and health of city employees and citizens, whereas the human costs locally and regionally will be tragic, so too will be the economic costs. And whereas the state has ordered all non-essential workers to stay home, and whereas the city must also ensure it has the resources to compensate its essential workers for the water and sewer, transportation and lighting, clerk and public safety functions, and the infrastructure necessary to maintain them. And whereas the Common Council expects revenue to fall in the area of sales tax, aid and incentives to municipalities, utility and property taxes, reimbursement, recreation and parking fees, and revenue from various permits and expenses to rise in the areas of COVID-19 preparation. First responder overtime, pension and healthcare contributions, bond interest, and employee assistance programs. And whereas the city remains concerned about the financial well-being of all its residents and must ensure that they are not burdened further through fees or additional taxation at this time of financial vulnerability. And whereas initial analysis demonstrates that the city will need to reduce spending in the general fund by $3,043,734 and in other funds by unspecified amounts. Whereas the council's 2020 budget will require significant amendments in order to address these mounting financial challenges, and the council requests that the mayor explore a combination of general fund utilization, reallocation of available and unappropriated revenues, and most pointedly, a reduction of appropriations. And whereas Charter Section C-6-6C describes the process to amend the budget after adoption. Reduction of appropriations. If it appears to the mayor that there is likely to be insufficient revenue or unappropriated funds to pay an appropriation, he or she shall promptly inform the Common Council of the amount of the estimated deficit and recommend a course of action. The Common Council may, by ordinance or resolution, reduce one or more unencumbered appropriations to eliminate such deficit. Whereas the Finance Committee has had multiple conversations with committee members, liaison chairs, the mayor, and department heads, and has produced a list of positions in no particular order that we believe reach the budget trimming goals and ensures employees have maximum access to new government stimulus funds. Now therefore be it resolved that the Common Council of the City of Plattsburgh requests that the mayor shall reduce the workforce for an unspecified duration through reduction in hours or full reductions in the following positions: City Clerk's Office, AFSCME typist. City Clerk.
I would make the motion that Beth has completed the read of the resolution. The only thing left is the list of positions, and that we invoke.
We can't do that, Mike.
You can't do it,
I have to
Beth?
finish the resolution, Dean is
Oh,
saying.
okay. Well, I'm sorry. I was hoping we could do that and save you a little reading, but go ahead.
I think because it's all going to be made part of the resolution.
I understand.
The positions are City Clerk's Office, AFSCME Typist, City Clerk's Office, AFSCME Typist, HIC, Community Development Management, Management, Director, Community Development, Finance Department, AFSCME Typist, Finance Department, AFSCME Typist, Mayor's Office, Management, CEC, Project Coordinator Sharing, Mayor, City Legal, Non-Union Corporation Counsel, MLD, IBEW, Municipal Lighting, 3-line helpers, MLD, IBEW, Municipal Lighting Line Helper, MLD, IBEW, Municipal Lighting Line Helper, HIC, MLD, IBEW, Municipal Lighting, MLD Plant Attendant, Public Works, AFSCME Draft Person, Public Works, AFSCME Groundskeeper, HIC, Public Works, AFSCME Laborer, Public Works, AFSCME Laborer, Public Works, AFSCME Laborer, HIC, Public Works, AFSCME Motor Equipment Operator, Public Works, AFSCME Motor Equipment Operator, Public Works, AFSCME Public Work Maintenance Worker 1, Public Works, AFSCME Public Work Maintenance Worker 1, Public Works, AFSCME Temporary Laborer, Public Works, AFSCME Water Meter Maintainer, HIC, Water Filtration Management, Management Chief Water Treatment Plant Operator, Water Pollution Control, AFSCME Wastewater Treatment Plant Maintenance Worker 1, Water Pollution Control Plant, AFSCME Wastewater PL Operator, Water Pollution Control, AFSCME WWTP Operator, WPCP Management Water Resource Chemist, Public Library AFSCME Cleaner, Public Library AFSCME Librarian 1, Public Library AFSCME Librarian 2, Public Library AFSCME Librarian 2, Public Library AFSCME Library Clerk, Public Library AFSCME Library Clerk, Public Library AFSCME Library Clerk, Public Library AFSCME Library Page, 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 Public Library AFSCME Principal Library Clerk, HIC, Public Library AFSCME Senior Library Clerk, Building Inspector's Office, AFSCME Senior Clerk, Police Clerk, CRS Ground System Admin, AFSCME Parking Enforcement Officer, Police Clerical, CRS Ground System Admin Non-Union School Crossing Guard, Police Clerical, CRS Ground System Admin Non-Union School Crossing Guard, Police CLER, CRS GRDS System Admin Non-Union School Crossing Guard, Police Cleric, CRS Ground System Admin Non-Union School Crossing Guard, Police CLER, CRS GRDS System Admin Non-Union School Crossing Guard, Police CLER, CRS GRDS System Admin Non-Union School Crossing Guard, Police CLER, CRS GRDS System Admin Non-Union School Crossing Guard, Police CLER, CRS GRDS System Admin, Police Dispatcher HIC, Police CLER, CRS GRDS System Admin, Police Dispatcher HIC, Police CLER, CRS GRDS System Admin, Police Dispatcher HIC, Police CLER, CRS GRDS System Admin, Police Dispatcher HIC, Recreation Complex, AFSCME Laborer, Recreation Complex, AFSCME Laborer, Recreation Complex, AFSCME Laborer, Recreation Complex, AFSCME Recreation Leader, Recreation Complex, AFSCME Recreation Maintenance Worker, Recreation Complex, AFSCME Recreation Program Coordinator, Recreation Complex, AFSCME Typist, Recreation Management, Recreation Fitness Center Supervisor.
That's moved by Counselor Barbell, second by Counselor Kelly. Discussion. I'd like to begin discussion by noting that this is requesting of me that I am going to be engaging in discussions. Obviously, we'll need to approach the union, the civil service, et cetera, for reductions for an unspecified duration in hours or full reductions. So there's about as many negotiations that we'll now need to proceed with as there are positions listed. And I should also note that some of those negotiations will be for reduced hours, hopefully, but that's going to be voluntary. Obviously, the people we're negotiating with will have to be willing to participate in that. And some of those negotiations will be with other entities that have the responsibility for doing these reductions ultimately. Like, for instance, the library, we cannot reduce the library directly. So just as long as you understand that this is really just the beginning of a series of negotiations rather than the final decision on these various items. And just want to maybe check with our legal counsel to make sure if that's an accurate interpretation of the various steps ahead.
I'm gonna have to recuse myself from answering. So I wasn't involved with the drafting of this, and obviously based on the personal nature of it, I can't advise you with this.
And obviously, given the number of tasks ahead to do this, I appreciate all your guidance and your help and assistance in doing it as well. And obviously, I'll have to work very closely with a lot of different people to realize the spirit of these reductions in whole or in part. And I hope that we have a lot of uh, city employees that are willing to participate in partial reductions or full reductions and understand, and we'll do the research. We'll help them do the research on their behalf with respect to the federal stimulus funds and their ability to access those programs as well. And I also want to mention that it's of unspecified duration as well. Our goal and intention is to bring as many of these individuals back as to full-time status as we possibly can, as quickly as the city can afford to do so. Some of that is out of our hands. Many of the positions listed are not currently in-office positions. They're people that have been released to go home because of the work from home or the not work from home standard as part of the pause order by the governor. So I think we're in for a very complex period of discussion with a variety of different individual and collective stakeholders over the coming weeks.
Well, this is the one I have a lot of questions with, like, and my biggest question are the reactions of other stakeholders and how does this affect the DRI? What's the what's Empire State Development's take on some of this? What's Saratoga and Associates? Will this affect the work they're doing? Or Benner, will this affect work they're doing? Prime, will this affect their plans or any of that? I think a lot of that would be better discussed in an executive session about any specific people. But that's kind of my big concern here, as Richard touched upon previous too, is like we're talking about what is the effect that we can see on the effect that it will have on services. Clearly, we talked about the beach earlier, but there's a lot more services that the city provides. And, my biggest questions, I guess, would probably relate to how this would amount to changes in services, changes in any plans that the city has, and things of that nature.
Yeah, I guess.
Report to you when I sent out information requests to the various department heads for how we would meet the goals of reducing the budget based on the charge from the council a couple of weeks ago. I outlined based on the governor's orders, what is considered an essential service. And much of what the city does is actually in that category. And I think I mentioned earlier in an earlier council meeting that just because a department is an essential service, like for instance, fire or police, it doesn't necessarily mean that each individual in that department is performing an essential service. So it's very complicated to determine this. The issue of whether each of these services will be missed, I can tell you that I think every one of these services will be missed to some degree or another. And if they weren't missed, I guess we should have asked ourselves long ago why we were providing that service. So I don't think there's any easy answer to that. You're absolutely right that every one of these individuals performs a valuable service. At this time, I guess from what I'm reading from you all is we're having to be put in the unenviable position to decide what are the most essential services that the city has to provide going forward in these very turbulent times. But you're right, every one of these is going to be something that we're going to miss. There's no doubt about that.
And I guess my concern, I guess I echo Patrick. I understand and I don't disagree. You know, I'm not looking to raise taxes 33%. I'm not looking to get to the end of the year and say, oh my God, we should have done something. But I think my concern is that, you know, this list of positions has been put forward and I know a lot of thought went into them, but now you're asking me to, with very little time to process, you're asking me to vote on these positions as though, you know, and I'm not saying you guys didn't do your due diligence, but for me to vote affirmatively for this particular set of positions is different than saying that we have a budget reduction that we have to take care of and such. And I understand all of the things. And again, I'm trying to be logical and thoughtful about how I'm approaching this and seeing this list and now processing the services and the things. I guess I just echo Patrick. I've got a lot more questions than I thought, having just received the list pretty recently. So, you know, I don't know the specifics. You know, again, you're asking me to vote that, yes, I agree. And I haven't really had time to think these things through and what effects they have and whatnot. I do have a lot of questions.
I'd like to speak to those issues, Patrick and Paul. They're very valid concerns you have, but what I'd like for you to do is think of it in this framework. Your finance committee, that is Jeff Moore, myself, and the mayor, we have had extensive discussions with department heads, with our fellow counselors, the mayor, and we did not create this list of positions in a vacuum, okay? We did it with a lot of collaboration with the department heads. We took an initial stab at it and discovered that, you know, some of the assumptions and decisions that we made were inappropriate, and we made changes at their request. As I said, we've been working on this all week, and it's really been a moving target, but we did finally this afternoon arrive at what we think is a decent and sensible number of positions and type of positions to temporarily cut. And what we did basically was look at the entire workforce and say, you know, what are the essential jobs? Which ones do we absolutely, without the shadow of a doubt, have to keep? So those were off the table. And then there were others where, gosh, we really do need to keep these positions for some of the objectives that we're trying to achieve here in the city. And then the remaining positions were determined, you know, to be at home and not working in a lot of cases, and otherwise non-essential employees. So in the same way that I guess you might expect the, say, infrastructure committee to go out and do its homework and come back to you with recommendations on what to do about water and sewer or whatever, you would trust the finance committee to go out and do its homework and come back to you with what we believe are the best recommendations. And that's exactly what we've done. Jeff and I have been beating the bushes all week to get this before you in the form that it's in. And we didn't want to present it too early because it's some very, very sensitive information. You don't just, throw around a list of positions and let it get out to the, general public and knowledge that, yes, these things are happening. You would have an uproar here at City Hall, I promise you that. So we've tried to avoid that and just keep it to reasonable discussion. What can we do to save the city's finances? That has been our objective from the start, and that will continue to be our objective. And I hope you'll look at it in those terms.
No, I appreciate that, and I'm not saying, I'm not disagreeing that you guys didn't have the best interest. I guess again, the recommendation comes forward, and the vote again has to be based on. I trust that you guys did your due diligence. That's not what I'm saying here, but at the same time, I assumed that there would be some, an opportunity to process and to give feedback back, and it's just, I guess that's where I'm struggling again. It's not a slight to the work that the committee has done by any means, and I understand the recommendation is coming from you guys.
I would ask you to trust that we did our due diligence. We were very careful about this and did not take the obligation lightly. We would like to act quickly. We don't want to have to come back to you and say, in a few weeks, well, we need to cut 70 positions, not 62, or we need to cut 80 positions, not 70. We need to act, and we need to see if we can get some impact on the city's finances immediately. So that is where we are tonight.
And I'd like to be sure that I understand, and hopefully you understand, that this is the beginning, it's not the end. There's not going to be any job actions tomorrow morning. This is now an opportunity to have further discussions with all the various affected department heads. And I may come back to you saying they've come up with a better mousetrap between now and next week, and ask you for some leeway on that. As a matter of fact, I fully expect, and I had a discussion with one department head just before the meeting, that maybe there's another better way to do it. And he might want to get together with his colleagues and find out if there's some sort of job sharing thing that he could do, etc. There isn't going to be any job actions immediately. This is just the very first step in having those important discussions. And when I first put out the feeler to all the department heads asking for suggestions on how to cut the budget, and Chamberlain Marks a moment ago calculated it works out to be about a 13.2% reduction, if I think I recall this number. I put out a number roughly that, I put out a number about 15%. If you were to cut each of your departments by 15%, please make some suggestions. And this is 15% in operating costs. It's not 15% in capital costs, but operating costs that we pay each week and write a check. And it probably won't surprise you that I don't think I had one single proposal to cut one existing job. I had a couple of proposals, including from my office, to cut a job that's currently not filled, but nobody proposed at all to cut any jobs of existing positions, and understandably so.
The proposal I sent to you had 2 positions and amounted to a total of 124,000. I said that's the only way we could do it, to be able to cut 50% from our finance data processing departments. 2 positions, no overtime, 16,000 in Munis cuts and 4,000 in Gatsby 75 reporting cuts. So I did respond.
Okay, yeah. Or you may have. There's another couple of department chairs here too that I don't believe had actually proposed individuals, but I understand why, and why would you, right? If there's another easier way to do this, obviously that's what we would all want to do. And most people actually propose no cuts at all. And nobody proposed more than 15% cuts. I can guarantee you of that. But that's just the nature of how difficult this exercise is. It's incredibly difficult. But like I said, this list is not the end of it. This list is the beginning of it. I really don't know how else we could do it. I could go back and say to my department heads, okay, now I'm really serious. Really, I need 15% cuts. And I need you to propose bodies to do that. And I suspect I probably wouldn't have much more success than asking the very same question 2 weeks ago. So I think that by putting something out there, now we get the conversation going. And some of these conversations, we don't have much authority on at all. Like, for instance, the library. They're really going to have to come up with their own solution for this. We acknowledge that. And I hope that our departments will get together and say, instead of one of us being cut, how about if two of us job share 50% or something like that? There are job share provisions under the Federal Stimulus Act. That would be ideal, to share the pain around a little bit. But I don't know how that's going to go, except for you all asking me to go out with some sort of mandate to get this done, with this as a default position, that maybe we can work to do better than this. What I don't think would probably work is if you all decide that you really want to be the ones to go through this list and have these negotiations and work with each of these department heads and talk to these individual employees, or make the determination that you think one person in one department is more valuable than another person in another department. I think that's an unenviable task. Unfortunately, that's kind of my job. I'll have to do that. But I would doubt that any of you would want my job right now and having all those conversations, then coming back to some sort of group in the end and saying, okay, I figured it out, I've met your mandate. So, it's one of those things, you just might want to be careful about what you ask for.
Well, I'd just like to make a comment. Honestly, I think every one of us would probably come up with a somewhat different list in some regards. I, cannot say that, I don't have a little bit of heartburn with, various portions of this, but we all have to agree on this, and there's, 62 positions here. I think if we all tried to come up with our own list, we would have anarchy. Is this a perfect list? It's a start, but I understand that everyone has different feelings on every one of these positions, probably, and it's very unpleasant. But I know we have to move forward somehow or other, and I hope everyone understands that the difficulty in coming up with a list that everyone would not necessarily agree with, but be pleased with. There's no pleasant outcome to any of this. We just have to keep moving forward. I understand now. I'm sure out of 62 positions, someone would have a different view on some of them, and that's to be expected. We're all different people, and we all have different concerns. But I don't know how to explain it other than how else would you come up with a list? I think there was a fair amount of input on this. I can't take a whole lot of credit, but I think all the people in departments know that we have to trim. I don't know of any good way to put it. It's a very unpleasant task, and there's no way we're all going to be happy with this in the end. But this is it.
And I can tell you that I have had some very, very difficult conversations with some department heads already, especially the ones that are most profoundly affected by this. And I have to their credit, they understand the difficulty of this, and it's not easy for any of them, not easy for any one of us to look at a single name on this list. But they were up to the task. They ultimately, they all recognize that what they need to do is figure out a way to preserve the functions of their departments. And they were helpful. None of them wanted to offer up any names, obviously. Who would? But when we put a list of names out there and start talking about functions and core essential services, etc., I think that going through that exercise, it's kind of obvious those areas that they all understood they really, really needed to protect. I think that this list, especially given the flexibility to do job shares and do some imaginative solutions that aren't on this list yet, I think it's probably I think it's a very good effort on their part and on everybody's part who's been involved in this. But no, you're absolutely right, Councilor Moore. By no means perfect, and I think it's going to be modified yet. But with this as the basis for future discussion.
I would just want to add too, I think this list will be modified. I think once tomorrow, if this passes, the union's going to take notice of this immediately. And they are going to look at, hopefully, they will look at what can they do to help preserve jobs for people by reducing expenses. And they're in a position that none of us are, that they can look at these things and they can come up with a job sharing plan. They can come up with a freeze of pay. They can come up with, a 10% reduction. They can come up with a lot of things that we can't do. And my hope is that as the reality of this, we've been talking about it for some time at meetings, that doesn't penetrate until something actually happens. When this passes, it is going to create a whole different dynamic. And I hope that at that point, the unions will step up to the plate and become a partner in figuring out how to solve this crisis.
And you actually, another point too, if we could do this as simply as everybody take a certain X percentage reduction in salary, I'll tell you, I'll be the first person to offer that. But that's very difficult for people to, everybody tends to live within their means. It's difficult for people to take reductions in salary. I understand that. But that is one option out there that that maybe might float to the top. I don't know.
Well, I think the mayor makes good points, and I think Jeff made a very good point. If you ask me, I have no ability whatsoever to even start a list like this personally, or define it, but I'll just leave it at that.
Any further discussion? Are you prepared to take probably the most gut-wrenching vote you'll ever have to take in your lifetime? Roll call.
Counselor Barbell?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor DeDominicus?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
No.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
There are no travel requests.
Thank you. Are we on to any new business?
No, we're into initial consideration.
Thank you. Any additional council reports? Any further public comment? Let me give it a moment. Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilor Barbell, second by Councilor McFarland. Roll call.
Counselor Barbell?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly,
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs,
Yes.
Counselor DeDominicus,
Yes.
Counselor McFarland,
Yes.
Counselor Moore.
Yes.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.